If you want to win more, you got to learn how to lose less. And on today's lesson, I'm going to teach you my simple process for figuring out what's going wrong in a match, why you're losing, and how you can fix it. So let's get started. Tennis is incredibly difficult, but that doesn't mean it's complicated. And I have a very simple framework for navigating a match when things aren't going your way. And so the first question you always need to ask yourself is what is happening? And if you're losing, I can promise you what's happening is you're missing. Now, if you're a 3-5 playing a 3-5, it's because you're making too many mistakes. Yes, your opponent's hitting some winners, but not that many. And the same thing holds up even if you're playing someone much better. If you're a 3-5 playing a 4-5, I can promise you you're losing because you're missing. So the first thing to acknowledge is even though it might feel like your opponent is doing so many things to you, the bottom line is if you are losing, you are missing too much. The second question you need to ask yourself is what am I missing? If I'm missing so much, what is the bulk? What is the biggest piece of the pie of my mistakes? Maybe it's your forehands on the run. Maybe it's your backhand slice. Maybe it's your return to serve. But typically speaking, your errors are not going to be evenly distributed. Your opponent is either forcing you in an error from a deep shot in the corner, or maybe you just have a weakness that keeps showing up. So you need to pay attention. What shots am I missing? And the beauty of this is not only will it help you solve the problem in the future, but it also might help you build confidence. Instead of saying your forehand sucks, it might just be your running forehand. It might just be your forehand approach shot. So the more detail you can give yourself as to what you're missing, not only will it help you solve the problem in the future, but it might also help you realize your forehand's not all that bad. It's just a specific type of forehand. The third question you ask yourself, where am I missing? So let's just say that I was missing a lot of forehands. Am I missing them net? Am I missing them wide? Or am I missing them deep? And of course, you will likely miss in all three areas throughout a match. But typically speaking, it's going to be the same type of mistake that pops up the most. So you might be hitting a lot of forehands in the net. You might be hitting a lot of forehands wide, or maybe you're not getting enough spin and you're consistently missing deep. But once you realize what shot you're missing, a forehand, where I'm missing it, the net, now you can actually take the next steps to solve that problem. And this leads us to the fourth question, which is why am I missing? And this is where there actually becomes a little bit of skill involved. So why would I be missing a forehand? It could be because I have a technical deficiency. Maybe my racket strings aren't closed enough. Maybe I'm not coiling enough. Maybe you have a flaw in your stroke that you're working on a regular basis and it just breaks down during a match. It could be target based. Maybe you're just trying a shot you shouldn't be trying. You're running in the corner, chasing down a ball outside the doubles alley, and you're slapping a ball down the line. That probably isn't a technical mistake, it's a mental mistake. The third thing that could pop up is maybe your opponent is legitimately forcing you into making that mistake. They're hitting a really high, heavy, deep ball. They're hitting pace in the corner, and you're not good enough to handle it. So it could be any of those three things. It depends on the level of your opponent and that specific day, but you have to narrow which one of those three things is most likely the result of why I'm missing. Is it my technique? Is it my shot selection? Or is it my opponent legitimately forcing that error? And that leads us to the last question, which is how do I solve this problem moving forward? And this is where you really need to work with your coach at home. But let's say you're missing a bunch of balls in the net. Honestly, to me, that's a target-based problem. So I would say you need to just aim higher. And I know that sounds stupid, but that's actually the answer. Let's say you're missing a lot of returns, but it's because your opponent has a really fast serve and they're legitimately forcing it. How can I solve that problem? Well, if you back up a lot, that gives you more time to see their fast serve and you might be able to make more returns. So each specific instance might have a different correction, but this is where you can walk through with your coach. And when you walk through in your match review, you can go, what am I doing? I'm missing. What am I missing? Forehands. Where am I missing them? Maybe the net, maybe wide, whatever. Why am I missing them? And then how can I solve this? So I'm actually going to show you a clip here from Winston Du's page. If you haven't seen it, he has a lot of cool, interesting matchup and point play. I'm going to break down 6 games of that match and show you how I would coach someone to solve their problems. All right, so let's watch 6 games here from Winston Du's page. He allowed me to use this video. He's got some really cool content and matchups on his page, so I highly recommend you go out and check that out. As we watch the points here, I just want you to pay attention to how they're ending, what shots are being hit, and we can go through the process that we've already talked about. So right there, you can see a forehand wide. And if you follow my content at all, you know that one really pains me. But I like Trey on the near side here. He's a good athlete. He obviously has a really big serve, especially for, I mean, look at that thing. That's a really good looking serve. His technique on both sides is decent. And so I actually think he should be able to hang with Winston, even though Winston is about 2 UTRs better. I would expect these points to be pretty decent. I mean, look at that forehand. We got a lot to work with Trey on this side. He's the type of player I would love to coach. Tough to tell from the angle. That's a backhand deep. Again, we've got a lot of errors to start the match, which is totally typical. Again, missing in the net. We've got 92 million miles to the sun. Why are we hitting in that 3-foot object that's right in front of us? I mean, Trey has serious heat on this serve. And we got a forehand long. So what's happening? Why are we down 1-0? We're missing. We know that. What are we missing? We're missing a hell of a lot of forehands. We're missing them all over the place, net, wide, and long. But we're not losing to Winston right now because he's playing so incredible. We got another forehand return error. We're missing right now, or we're losing because we're missing forehands. And that's just a really solid technical forehand. I think a lot of this for Trey is the shot selection and targets. Right there, that's a tricky shot. He's on defense, but he should absolutely make that lob and make Winston hit an overhead winner. So again, it's just missing over and over. Missed forehand pass. Winston's come to the net twice. Hasn't had to hit a volley. Forehand return error. All right, so we're down 2-0. Why are we in this predicament? Because Trey's missing way too many forehands. But look at what we got to work with the serve. I mean, I'm telling you, I would have loved to be sitting on that chair on the side of the court and see if I can get in Trey's ear and get him to try some simple shots. Oh, that one hurts my soul. You're on defense. Play a defensive shot high through the middle. Do not play an offensive shot where you go fast down the line. Again, an absolute cannon of a serve from Trey. All right, those two forehands with the height, sign me up for those. A little bit more of that, please, Trey. He forced Winston into a mistake. But again, not many winners. We're 3 games and a point in right now. Points are won and lost with errors. There we go. Right on cue. Winner from Winston. Great point, but a great way for Trey to lose that point. Okay, Winston must have heard me somehow through the internet. 2 winners in a row. There's our forehand return in the net from Trey. We know this is a common problem, but this is also what I see is Trey is making these same mistakes over and over again. There we go. And he's not fixing it. And this is what I watch. And this is why we're making the video to give you a framework. There's another forehand in the net to stop this from maybe lasting 10 games and maybe make it last 2 games so you can still come back and win the set. Another forehand mistake. I mean, don't you think at this point Trey should hit a little slower, a little more spin, maybe 3-4 feet over the net, and bring his margins in, just like that ball right there. Excellent ball. There we go. Trey, it's almost like you're listening to me. Great point. I'm pretty sure I've watched this one before, and I think Winston comes up. Good. Too good from Winston. That's fine, but that's the point Trey needs to be playing over and over. He can solve his first problem, and that is that he's missing a hell of a lot of forehands, predominantly in the net, but just forehand in general. And now you can see the score is lopsided, so it's 4-1. And now the player on the near side, Winston, he's the better player, but also he can relax a little bit. Like he's built to lead. There's way less pressure on him than there was at, say, 1-1 in the first when maybe he has some nerves about playing someone a little bit below him. That forehand right there, definitely forced. Same with that one. But again, we're looking at this overall set. That's a great volley. We're looking at this situation. Why are we here? What is happening? Trey is missing. What shots are Trey missing? Trey's missing forehands, right? Where is he missing them? Predominantly in the net. What I would say, because his technique is actually pretty damn good, is I would say, Trey, hit 4 feet over the net minimum, hit right through the middle of the court, try to play with depth, doesn't really matter, and serve huge first serves in the body. So let's get the first serve percentage up. We're going to stop losing to Winston, and we're going to see if he can come to the net consistently and beat us. And honestly, because he's 1.8 UTR points higher, he might be able to do that. He is definitely the better player, and he might beat Trey, but so far Trey has just been losing to Winston. So you can see from that video from the outside, it seems pretty simple what's going on with Trey. He missed a ton of forehands, but he never solved his problem. So all this sounds so simple, and I'll bet you Trey did not think about any of this stuff when he was playing the match. Otherwise, he would have solved his problem. Now, one thing I realize is that players are so reluctant to solve the first problem because they're scared of an imaginary second problem. So in that match, Trey might have been thinking, well, if I hit the ball higher and slower with more spin, Winston's just going to crush it. And he did a couple times. He forced some legitimate errors. There's a lot of times where that didn't happen. And by the way, let's not worry about the second problem until it actually happens. We've got to get past the first hurdle before we worry about the second hurdle. So that's something I've definitely seen. Now I'm going to show you an actual second clip from Winston where he is the underdog playing someone a little better. And I'm going to test you on this one, and it's going to be a little bit of a surprise, but I want to see if you can handle it. All right, so here comes the real test, and I'm actually going to help you a little bit, and I still think a lot of you might not pass. This is Mark on the near side. He's a full UTR point better, and we're just going to watch these points, and we're going to see if we can go through the process that I spoke about. We got a second serve here. Great forehand deep in the corner. And a nice composed forehand approach shot winner. It's a great point by Mark. Now, Mark is the stronger player. He's a full UTR point higher, but also I think if Winston plays the right way, he's still within striking distance where he could win this match. Couple nice forehands exchanged here. Great targets, great height, great spin. All right, a Stokey 6 air. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I hate that wide air. And a good serve and a missed return. Now, here's where my quiz or my test comes in. Part of those questions that you have to ask yourself, you need to be aware of what's going on. And so I would ask you, what are the 5 points that just happened in order? So if you don't know what happened, there's no way you can answer my questions logically and correctly. So the first point, Mark missed a forehand long, right? The second point, Mark hit the second serve, hit the good heavy ball in the corner, and hit the forehand approach shot winner. On the third point, Winston missed a forehand return in the net. On the fourth point, Winston missed that tragic ground stroke wide for no reason. And on the fifth point, Mark hit a pretty good serve and Winston missed the return wide with a forehand. So if you can't name those points in order, you can ask yourself the questions that I came up with all day long, and it's still not going to help you. So if you pass that test, congrats, you've got good working memory and you were paying attention. If you couldn't name those 5 points in order, we got to work on that moving forward. So obviously, that game was lost with errors. We're going to now watch a couple more games and go through our process that we spoke about earlier. So we got another miss from Mark. And again, this is the game of tennis. It's missing back and forth. Once you learn how to be solid, there's a double fault. Once you learn how to be solid is when your level really goes up. By the way, I love how both these guys hit the ball. They've got good spin over the net, great targets. You can see a lot of these are kind of in the middle cross-court area. I actually like a lot of what they're doing. By the way, there's a slice deep for absolutely no reason. So if I'm Winston, I'm kind of going, hey, I see some holes in this guy's game already. He's donated me some free points. I just got to lock it down and be super solid. That's a lucky ball to go over the net. Look at Winston. Slice through the middle, nothing on it, and he gets a short forehand air. Nice return middle. And then a forehand wide. So now we're 1-1. Why are we losing? Both guys, why are we tied? They're both missing a little too much. That's a great one-hand backhand. Winston, backhand in the net. Can't have it from behind the baseline. That's a great serve. One of the few points that have been won so far by a great shot. A spray forehand long. I mean, I hope you're starting to see a pattern here that whether you're the stronger player or the weaker player, which we've seen Winston be in different situations here, the points are still ending mostly in airs. Yes, the winners are sprinkled in. Yes, occasionally there is a forced error, but a lot of times it's just a straight up miss. Great forehand targets here from the guys. Look at that height from Winston. I love that. And again, random error. Winston didn't have to do anything to force that from a player who is significantly better at this point, a full UTR. Now we got a double fault and we're back to deuce. Winston didn't really have to earn those 2 points. Ooh, lucky that wasn't a second double. Nice solid return. Winston with good margins here. He's not aiming too wide. Look at that floater slice through the middle. Yes, he was on defense, but it's okay to be on defense occasionally. That's not a problem. And a forehand long. So we went from 15-40 down to having a break point And then we just missed our return, right? But how did we get to that break point? By being solid and realizing our opponent is not going to really be able to beat us that often. Just deep on that serve there. Tight call from Winston. I love it. Really good backhand from Mark on the far side. And he ends up hitting a great ball. Now, he won those last 2 points, but Winston opened the door by missing that return and missing a few balls earlier. I do like Winston's game. He's so close to playing what I would call optimal strategy for someone at his level. Look at this, backhands cross. Tons of margin for both guys. Lucky that Mark made that. I mean, look, we fed Winston an overhead there, and Mark won the point. Again, it's a game of errors. I hope you are starting to understand that. Double fault. So we went missed overhead, double fault. And now we're down 15-30 in a world of hurt. That's a great down the line backhand. And we missed the pass. We don't even make him volley. So again, 3 errors there. Great return down the middle and a forehand wide. So Winston is primarily missing forehands. We have a couple double faults. Mark is also missing a fair amount of forehands. He hasn't missed many backhands. He's probably trying to be a little more solid on that side. The forehand's been a weapon at times, but he's also sprayed a little bit. So if I was coaching Winston, what's happening? You're missing too much. So we need extra height, extra spin. We bring the targets way in. I would probably stand a little deeper and wider on the returns because he's missed a few returns. And I would go, look, Mark will probably hit some pretty good forehands, but he's also going to spray a lot. And if you can just be rock solid with the high heavies middle, maybe more to the forehand side, honestly, because that's where a lot of his opponent's errors are going to come from, he can come back and win this match. But if he doesn't make any changes in this match, he's down 3-1. If he just keeps on with what he's doing and sprinkling in these forehand errors for no reason, he's going to go home a loser, but he might only remember the winners or the great shots that Mark hit instead of realizing a lot of this was in his control. So if you want to see how this match turns out, you should go follow Winston's page. Like I said, I watch a lot of the points from there, and he was so kind to let me use these matches to analyze. But go check that out, and you can see if Winston made these corrections. So hopefully this video helped you understand why you lose. And again, like I said, it's basically always going to be because you are missing too much. Now, the awareness of what is happening, what shot am I missing, where am I missing them, why am I missing them, and how can I solve that? That's a very rational process that you should be going through, not only after a match, but on changeovers. And once you get good, eventually in between points. But I typically find if you go through this, the answers are really not that complicated, and you actually have the tools to solve your problem. So next time a match is not going your way, go through this process and see if it'll help you win more matches.